Long Take Review, where 4 college professors talk film, providing insight, not assigning homework. I'm your host, Jen Subchakchai-Bankard, and I'm here with 2 pulp men of the year. Trust me, that'll make more sense later. First, he'd like to know if you want to barbecue a pig this weekend. It's PT McNiff. How's it going, PT?
It's going well. I don't have any quotes from this movie because we just watched it and there's no information about it online, and I didn't think of a good reference. So I'm just saying hello. Hi,
That's
Jen.
fair.
How are you?
We're fresh. We're hot off the presses. It's all good. And he's the top candidate once that job opens up. It's Antonio Elefano. How's it going, Antonio?
You Americans say to be fired is to be axed. Know what we say in Korea? Off with your head. I watched the trailer and pulled that.
Smart.
Very smart.
Really setting the tone for the rest of this episode. It's good. So, dear listeners, those were all references to the film we are here to review today, Park Chan-wook's latest work, No Other Choice. So this film premiered, I believe, at the Venice Film Festival. It's making its rounds during fall film festival season. We are at the phase where we're down to the local regional film festivals, and it just so happens that PT, Antonio, and I last night got to go see No Other Choice at the Newport Beach Film Festival, which is our kind of local regional film festival, and we had a great time. And so great that we were like, it doesn't make any sense to record an episode about this yet. The movie's not coming out till December, and yet we really want to talk about it. So here we are. So I would just say, if you are listening to this and you're like, when's this movie coming out? It's not coming out for a while, but we are going to do spoiler-free mode for a little bit. So listen to that first, so you're ready when it does come out, and then you can kind of bookmark this episode and come back to it after you've seen it. We do think this is going to be a movie that at least has some Oscar traction, which we'll get to at the end.
And I think it's fair to say we want to talk about it because we
liked it,
feel positively of it. And so, we're here to talk, about how much we liked it. So stick around and hear why we liked it, and maybe get around to seeing it, even though it may not get like a super wide release. I don't know. It's a, international feature. So, but it's something to keep an eye out for because it's
Neon is really the distributor. So it should get a decent, they do okay. It's not like they haven't won any Oscars or anything. Anyway, so the film is adapted from a 1997 novel by Donald Westlake called The Axe, as referenced in Antonio's opening quote. The film follows a veteran paper mill manager who faces budget cuts and layoffs at his factory. I really can't say more than that. Spoiler-free mode's going to be tough. Okay. Anyway. Well, am I right?
You're right. No, I think that
you are right. I can't really
say
anything else. That's not the complete picture, listeners. Okay. If you are listening to us for the first time, as we said, we're going to have a spoiler-free section at the beginning. Usually we do about 20 minutes. We're going to try to push that as long as we can, maybe to 30, for those of you who have not yet seen the film. And then with a very clear alert, we will shift into spoiler mode for the rest of the show. PT, if listeners think they have no other choice but to keep listening to us after this episode, what can they do?
If listening to us is like the fine touch of freshly made security paper, then please, why don't you follow us wherever you get your podcasts? We host the feed on Jen's Substack at thelongtake.substack.com, but you can also find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Overcast, YouTube, and many more locations. Wherever you listen, you can find us. You can also follow us on social media. We are on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at The Long Take Review. We are also on Letterboxd. The account is at LTR Pod, or you can search for the hashtag LTR Pod to see what each of us individually has been watching. Jen?
Thanks, PT. So as usual, we're going to start with the short take. What was everyone's general reaction to No Other Choice?
I thought this was such a good time and a perfect film to see at a film festival. I was laughing and wincing and groaning like the whole time, along with the rest of the audience. I had the pleasure of sitting between the two of you, and it's a good movie when you're constantly looking, to your side just to smile at sort of grateful disbelief that just happened. The movie, I think, announces what it is in its opening scene and just careens onward from there. It's as messed. So this is due out in Christmas, and it is as messed up a Christmas movie as you could possibly ask for. PT, what did you think?
Yeah, I fully agree with all of that, and we'll take the potential note that we could get from people. I'm thinking of our fourth co-host who was not able to attend with us because he lives on the other side of the country. That it's easy to get like roped in when you have the experience of seeing a movie early and then spoilers for the spoiler free mode. We got to see the director give a talk afterwards and answer some questions, and that maybe that elevates the experience. But I think this movie's pretty undeniable in terms of the ways in which it tells this story. It has it's. I mean, Park Chan-wook is from the experience that I have had, and my understanding of many of the movies I have not seen. It has is a very masterful director. It was very clear here how like he's able to balance these different like faders of emotion and energies in this. I do not think I expected, even though I had heard like, oh, it's kind of a comedy. I don't think I expected how much I would laugh. But it also isn't like it has a lot of other like you have like empathy for some of these characters. You're horrified by some of the things that happened, and just in like bemused amazement at other steps along the ways of this journey. It's really excellent, and it's interesting that it took what I completely understand must in the novel be a very American story and made a very Korean movie out of it. That is, that cross pollination what is super interesting, and maybe we'll have a chance to talk about that. I don't know, but yeah, this was a great time, and I'm glad we have a chance to rush right into the mics in under 24 hours and talk about it. Jen, what do you think?
Here. So I also really enjoyed this. I think it was satisfying on so many levels. The tonal blending really should not work, and it really does. Like as sort of both of you have kind of alluded to, like it. There are things that are very dark in this film, and yet we were laughing most of the time, and that's messed up. But it was it was also great. And I think that, so yeah, the tone works really well, but it's like, seems like a high wire act to pull off. Like a lesser director probably would not have been able to do it. And the editing in this, just like the transitions between shots and between scenes, and some of the shots in this are unlike anything I've ever seen before, and just are worse. It is so rare, I think, to truly be taken aback by what you see because it's so new. And some of the camera work in this, I was just like, whoa, what just happened? Right? In a similar way, the plot is like, did that really just happen? I felt that way about the visual storytelling in this as well. There's just like the use of like zooming out in this movie is insane. Like it's just, and like in of reflections, like we'll get into it, I guess. But like, yeah, so I enjoyed this on many levels. And then also the social commentary is really solid as well. So I feel like this was just humming, and the structure is also very tightly wound, and it's very clear. It's sort of, as Antonio said, it announces what it's going to be, and you kind of know what's going to happen more or less. But because that's a boon instead of a bane, right? Like the fact that the structure is very clear, it builds up a lot more of the dread and kind of anticipation for what is going to happen. But there are still some surprises. For me, at least there were.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's like I kind of have no notes for this movie. But that said, I guess we should kind of hone in our excitement and think about the recommendation algorithm in which we establish the audience of this film. Like, are we recommending this to everyone? Are we recommending this to Park Chan-wook fans? Are we like, what we kind of threw around a couple of genres, but like really, like, how are we explaining this movie to other people in terms of recommending it?
I don't know if I'm recommending it to everyone. Like I loved it, and I think most people who like films in the way that we do will probably really love it too. But I think, especially when you're dealing with comedy, people have very like specific tastes and specific things that they find funny, and and I know a lot of people who do not like the intersection of like thriller and like violence and comedy. Like that doesn't go for them. And I know people who would just be like, that was weird. I don't like that. I didn't think that was funny. I thought it was just whatever. But I loved it. I mean, Parasite is like the most obvious comp that we can raise. But the other thing that I another kind of like dark comedy with like, lots of dread about things and like strange, awful things happening is Fargo, which I love,
Mm.
and is like a movie that for many years was just a movie that I could just put on. It would just make me happy every time, as twisted as that was. What do you all think?
Yeah, that's a great. I was thinking there is something very Coen Brothers around this,
Yeah,
and
sure.
that the general. Yeah, I think that maybe to Antonio's point, it is a disservice to maybe like build this as a comedy and to be like, if you're looking for laughs, why don't you go and see No Other Choice? It is much more sort of about the human condition and the social structures around people and value questions of what people trying to struggle in periods of transition in their life, like when you are laid off from a long career. So that is that is much more in the primary. I think there were a lot of very funny things, but yeah, it isn't necessarily like a wham bang hilarious thing, even though I was cackling a whole bunch during this movie. um I'm trying to think of the best way of saying anything about genre or anything without discussing about spoilers at all. It is, I mean, I guess like thriller, there is a sort of like people making, and this is I think maybe why I was thinking Coen Brothers, like a Burn After Reading, or Fargo is probably the best example of that. That of like, oh, it's people making bad choices of like, stuff they shouldn't do, but with the intention of, well, this, I need this to achieve something that I need, or I want to keep this, I need to make something happen, and the domino sequence of events that can then unfold. So that's that's not really a genre, and that's pretty vague, but hopefully that is you have an idea of the kind of thing that maybe you like about that. I think this encompasses a lot of potential avenues of that very well, with like different characters and what they do and how they approach stuff. Yeah, I will also say that, to Jen's point about all the interesting camera work and visual elements, if you are someone who is just like, I like to see a very well shot movie where like interesting visual storytelling choices are made, this is a great choice for that. Even if you are someone who's just sort of like, it's in another language, I have to read my movie, and you don't like that, I think that you can, the visual flavor of this and the language that you get from all of the.
But it was about an hour before the movie started, and we noticed that there was a line that was already forming, and we didn't want to get stuck and with like bad seats, so we just we're hungry, but fine, and just stood in the line, and it's just a bunch of people waiting in line, fine, not complaining, just like ready to go. And there's just something about the energy of like of folks who are willing to do that and want to do that and just really love cinema. Um, and being, we talk sometimes about how how there's like reception at a film festival sometimes does not track with like how we ultimately receive it whenever it finally comes down to us, right? So we the most famous, like the most recent example was like the Smashing Machine, and people going crazy at Venice, and then the three of us being like, so
He still hasn't watched that movie yet.
I
he's
probably
not
never
going
will.
to.
I don't think I will.
Oh,
It'll go
What if-
streaming at some point.
what if The Rock gets nominated? Will you watch it then?
Probably,
Okay.
but only then.
It's possible. It's possible. But anyway, this so there's an energy that comes associated with it. And PT mentioned that there's sort of like a festival bump because it's just people who want to like the movie and who've gone out of their way to do it, to be there, and so but yeah, just as I said, I think it was just the perfect movie to see in these circumstances. It felt special to see it early, and then of course having the director there and being able to like, you know, listen to his thoughts. He actually was pretty forthcoming, I thought, about, his approach, what things meant. Or I got in trouble last year because I asked a question of Marianne Jean-Baptiste that I was not supposed to, like asking about like her motivation and stuff like that. And I got called naughty. And then I was like, okay, okay, Marianne.
Yes, ma'am.
But yeah, yes, of course. But here he was very open and very so affable and so energetic too, and just like you have to imagine that going through the festival circuit can be a really exhausting thing, but maybe it's obviously I think better when the movie is just this good, right? When you're just really proud of it and the reception is as rapturous as it is. I mean, I checked when I was looking at the reviews. I know that it hasn't been released wide yet, but a lot of people have reviewed it because it came out in Venice and various film festivals. People have seen it, and it's like 100% on Rotten Tomatoes now, right? Like at some point, that's probably going to change. Some contrarian whatever is gonna whatever it, but for the major critics who go to those festivals to have seen it and to be unanimous and like this is an incredible movie, it says something. So I don't think that it was just because we were in that environment. I think that it's a well-earned sort of like praise that we're about to heap on, that we've already heaped on it, and that we're going to continue to today.
You're just making me realize that we didn't really say we referred to themes, but we didn't actually say what those themes were. And I think your suggestion that like who's not going to like this movie, or asking that question, maybe the only people who don't like this movie are ones that don't really want to be confronted by how complicit they are in the harm capitalism does. Because I do think this movie does a really good job of kind of coming for us in our everyday lives and things that we either take for granted or feel like we can't live without. There's a streaming service that gets made fun of multiple times in this movie in a brilliant. It was just masterful. It's so good. And yeah, so I feel like that the movie definitely says like, hey, you think you're just an everyday person trying to make your way through the world and trying to support your family. Like, here's just how horrific that actually is. And I could see that making a lot of people uncomfortable. We don't want to be thinking about how we're contributing to things that are not working with the world, but then the great thing about the movie, in my Letterboxd review, I sort of said that the movie exonerates as much as it blames. And I think that's kind of the beauty of it, because it does kind of point fingers at, makes us take a hard look at ourselves and our everyday lives and kind of the choices that we make. No pun intended. But, or I guess pun intended, because the title of the movie. And they say it multiple times. But it also sort of says like, but it's not totally your fault. Like, we're all part of this terrible system, and people feel like they're stuck and they can't get out of it, and that they insert title of the movie. So I think there's a beauty to that, and it's not like a both sidesing of it. It's really like an acknowledgement of, yeah, this is why this is horrible, because you on the one hand need to survive in this world, but on the other hand, look at how we have to do that, right? And look at the society we've set up, and the like harsh competition and what people are willing to do in order to survive financially. So that's dangerously close to spoiler boats. Maybe we gotta go, but I don't know. And the other thing I will say about the screening itself was that it was a packed house. There was not a seat empty. In fact, I overheard one of the ushers complaining about, we're gonna get in trouble with the fire department because I guess they let a bunch of people like stand in the back or something. Or maybe people who were like volunteering and didn't get seats because they wanted to give those to people who paid tickets. But it was really nice to see so many like people from what I assumed was the sort of Korean and Korean American community around Orange County coming out and being like super excited about this. And it was, I don't know, it just felt really good. And they had a bunch of students from like a class at, I didn't catch what school it was.
Fullerton.
Cal State Fullerton, yeah.
Oh, the Cal State Fullerton. Okay. that they had done, because this is what the note I have for the Lido Theater: get more bathrooms, because I had to because I had to go use the restroom before I wanted to use the restroom before the screening started, and then I missed whatever student thing was happening because I came in partway through because the line was so long. But anyway,
I believe they're in a class that partly helps to organize at least this section of the film festival. So it's like a business and in film industry class, but this was also the Korean spotlight movie, and they have spotlights for different countries as part of, and different cultures as part of the Newport Beach Film Festival. So I think this is also was specifically a Korean class that was about sort of Korean film and maybe the Korean film industry. And then they get to work on the Korean spotlight section. My note, in addition to the bathrooms, which, it's a little easier for guys. So guys got, the bathroom was smooth on that end, but I would say turn off the pre-show visuals that were just shining on the face of the people standing on stage, the students who were trying successfully reading, but awkwardly so, with the small print of the law firm that paid for an ad on their faces, so they could introduce themselves, introduce the movie, introduce their teacher who had helped organize the event. And to Antonio's point earlier, there was an after party for this that seemed to be one of the festival's big gala things that clearly cost a lot of money, and people got very dressed up for. And the plebes like us, who only paid the $30 or so to pay a ticket for a film, were not given directions to where that party was. They
said where it was. It was at some club called Time.
Okay, that didn't mean.
But maybe that's vague enough that we don't know where it
was. Yeah, there was something about go if you have your wristbands, go. Well, people will direct you outside, and we did not have the wristbands. Yes to everything that Jen was saying about sort of the complicity, but also the communal reality of everyone is stuck in this system. We've already done a couple times, as did everyone, I believe, every single person who presented or introduced or talked in front of and after the movie last night, talked about the title of the movie and then no other choice, or made some sort of a choice thing. But I will say that phrase is used many times throughout the movie, or multiple times, but I would say upwards of many times. And you would think it wouldn't, but somehow it does have a unique and a meaningful impact each time it is used. And at the start of it, which I think we could say is just when there's this initial thing about the layoffs, and Antonio's quote that's from the trailer about, you say the axe has fallen, we say, we've chopped off your head. And there's layoffs. The new owners, the new American owners of this Korean paper company, who you only see briefly, ushered out of a building into a car and not listening to the employees talking to them, say, we have to do this. We got to make these cuts. There's no other choice. And it is sort of this mix starting from that point onward of that is something we tell ourselves, that we don't have another option, because the other option is something we don't really want to do or think about or embrace. But maybe we don't really have a choice, because the system that exists allows us to only value certain things and hold on to certain stuff. So in a way, it's kind of we do all have a choice collectively and individually. Of course we have choices, but then, in many ways, because of everything around us and because other people are not making other choices, we only have one choice that we can make. And what might that mean? And teasing that out is kind of the point of the movie, and seeing the places that takes people when they see, oh, this is where I've been boxed into. I guess I need to go follow this path and go out in this direction. So the only other thing that I will say before we do jump into spoiler mode is, of course, it was wonderful to see Park Chan-wook and hear him talk about it. I want to just give kudos to a person who will never hear this, I don't think, but the translator who was working on stage to translate between the local Orange County, Southern Californian moderator who was asking the questions, and then translated into Korean for Director Park, and then translated his answers so fast, working, furiously taking notes. But then, as soon as he stopped talking, she had the answers ready to go. and full robust, like I never felt like I was missing things. It was funny because we were in a room with people who were Korean and Korean American, certainly people who knew Korean. Is he would talk for maybe like 2 minutes, and a minute in, a bunch of people would start laughing, and then a minute would go by, and then the translator would start talking, and a minute in, we would laugh because we would finally hear what the joke was, because we only know English, or at least we do not know Korean. Yeah, that was great, and it was nice to see from this point, like where we've already gotten to of this local film festival. The conversation was already about the Oscar chances and where things may go. And he was like, that could be great, but I also am not looking forward to having to fly from Korea to California. That's a long time, and it seems very tiring. And that's when he mentioned that he talks to Bong Joon-ho and some of the people who were in Parasite, and that sounded like it was really annoying for them, and that it would be annoying for him. And so he sort of hopes that it doesn't get any nominations at all, which I don't think he really believes, but that was very funny. And that was one of those delayed reaction laughs, was he said it in Korean and people laughed who knew. And then we finally got to hear the joke, and it was funny.
Yeah, I think he was saying part of me was hoping that this wouldn't even get shortlisted.
Yes.
Because it is now the official selection from Korea for the Oscars, so he's in the running, he's on the list, and I think he was like kind of hoping that would.
And I mean, this is jumping the gun, but again, because this was not coming out for a little while, like pre spoiler mode, Oscars watch just around that component. Like, it is presumed that the Korean movie does not always move forward, and there have been Park Chan-wook movies that have been nominated and not. Have been the South Korean movie, but then didn't get into. For I believe Decision to Leave was one of those, right? Like, it did not get nominated. So. Am I right?
I remember people being very scandalized about that.
Yes, I mean people wanted Decision to Leave to get like above the line nominations, separate from all this, and so it is not impossible that he could get his wish and either not be shortlisted or not get an actual nomination. But it seemed like it is one of the three big potential finalists for international feature with sentimental value, and it was just an accident. Am I missing anything? I'm mostly looking at Jen because she's more. Wait, sorry,
I was trying to look up Decision to Leave's Oscar prospects.
I should not have been looking at Wikipedia.
Jen. Decision to Leave was shortlisted for international feature.
Okay,
which I think is what he's referring to, and then did not actually get nominated.
What are the current far out favorites for being nominated and then for the category? And my even before we saw this, my understanding was it was this movie, sentimental value, and it was just an accident are the three sort of those are gonna be nominated, and those could also get other nominations in other categories, which we will get to later on, I'm sure. But those all could be your zone of interest, your Anatomy of a Fall, your Drive My Cars, where it might break through in other above the line or not just the international feature, but other categories too.
I think Secret Agent is the other one that's on here, from Brazil. And I remember that because I think it was Joe Reed said something like, the only reason people are putting this on their lists is because they're like, well, it's Brazil. That's how Brazil do. I think that was his quote. That's how Brazil do, which I thought was hilarious. But people really like Wagner Moura, I think is the actor from that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And then there's a movie from Spain called Surat that I hear people talking about constantly.
Yes. Constantly.
And then there's the one that Joaquin Phoenix was really promoting at one of the European, it might have been Venice, The Voice of Hindrajab. So, so I think those are the ones those are the ones that I hear people speculating about.
Okay. So when the music stops, someone's not sitting. So, who knows, but okay.
But I think The Voice of Hindrajab, as far as I know, doesn't have American distribution. So I think that's tough. That's going to be a problem. But whereas It Was Just an Accident was purchased by Neon,
I believe is already playing right now in Los Angeles.
Oh, really? Man,
you gotta move up here. We gotta get up here. What are you doing? You got one like 8-day period a year when Newport Beach has movies, and the rest of the time they're up here.
I know.
It's Frankenstein, and it was just an accident.
I always feel like I should take more advantage of it than I do. Like last year we saw 3 movies. This year we saw 2. The other movie, for listeners who are wondering, PT and I got to go see Wake Up Dead Man, and there was a Q&A with Ryan Johnson. It was wonderful. We're holding all conversation about that movie out of respect for Greg.
Yes.
So that's not what we're talking about in this episode, but I do want you to know, listeners to know, that we have seen it. Anyway,
that was just bragging here at the end of spoiler mode. And if folks are listening when No Other Choice comes out, if we've re-upped this, they're going back into the archives, they'll be like, that movie's been on Netflix for 2 weeks. Who cares? But at this point, right now, on this day, we're a month out from it coming into theaters, and we feel great.
All right,
let's go to spoiler mode.
I think we're ready for spoiler mode. So if you have not seen, regardless of what time of year you were listening to this episode, if you have not seen No Other Choice, there's a lot to spoil.
Maybe they're waiting for fall. Maybe they're ready for fall, and that's when they're listening. That's the first line of the movie.
I only
remembered after we did the opening.
Yes, again, if you have not seen this movie and you don't want it spoiled, go watch it when you can. That you might have a wait. So maybe just like don't forget about us and then come back after you've seen it.
Speaking of songs with great horn parts, there's one in this movie.
Yes. Oh wait, so are you talking about the like actual fight scene that's in this?
Well, yeah. At one point, the man who's got the audiophile room is playing Sam and Dave, isn't he?
Yeah.
Hold on.
That was a great scene.
That was a great scene.
Mostly because like the volume being turned up so high, it just like added so much to the tension.
It was the only time in the movie when the subtitles were in English and Korean, because you're not supposed to be able to hear what they say because the music is so loud. So that was fun.
Let's provide some context.
Yeah, sorry.
Right?
No, that's it. So, come on. Welcome into spoiler mode, everybody. No context. It's all scattershot.
The structure of the movie, as Jen alluded to, right, is that the main character basically has to eliminate competition for a prospective job. He realizes that there's, right, at the beginning, he's about to kill someone who has a job that he wants, but then for various reasons, he doesn't kill that guy, but then thinks to himself, like, well, even if I did, doesn't guarantee that I'm going to get the job. So then he posts like a fake job, and then when the applications come in, he sorts them to determine who his main competition is, and then eliminates them. Right, and so this was the first kill, right? This guy, right? That
was the first target. That was the first A+ target. And I do, I want to say, not to interrupt your summary of what's happening, but I will say I had no idea what this movie was about. Like I hadn't looked at a trailer. I hadn't read any descriptions. I just was like, it's Park Chan-wook. I'm excited to see this movie. It's supposed to be good. I knew nothing. I knew nothing about it. And like Antonio says in the beginning, but this is like the first 15 or 20 minutes. We get a scene where this guy, I mean, very, very obviously like over the top, being like, everything about my life is great. Everything is absolutely perfect. And it was like, oh no, this is going to be bad. And again, like the first line is like, I can't wait for the fall. And it's like, okay. So clearly this is not going to go well for you. And then, immediately it's like, oh, he's mad that other people are going to be fired. And then he immediately is told, actually, no, you're the one who's going to be fired, or you're one of the people. And then he's sad for a little while. But once it got to that point where it was like he thought about killing someone to take that position, or think like, but he's like, I wouldn't even get that position. There's so many other people who've been laid off because all these companies are consolidating and shutting down. Once he got those resumes, like I did think when he was making his own company, I was like, oh, he's going to try to start his own company. Okay. Like I didn't get it until he laid out the resumes of the other people and had grades on them. Like there was the A-, A+, and had like the top 6 laid out. It was arranging them in order. And I was like, oh, this is this is when I realized it was a Coen Brothers movie. This is going to be a murder farce of this guy killing his way into just getting a job, getting back the job he had like 3 months before.
I'm just really glad we don't have like headshots of our students when we're grading their papers. That's what I thought of during those scenes. I was like, oh, that's brutal.
Oh, well, I thought it was my promotion file. And I was like, oh yeah. That's basically what these look like. There's a lot more pages.
Not a good movie to watch when your employer is doing massive budget cuts and layoffs.
Yes.
I thought about that the whole time. I was like,
well, Jen, there's no other choice.
We literally never mind.
We've gotten these emails recently. Antonio, sorry, you were giving us a good rundown of things.
Yeah, I mean, no, I just wanted to provide the context as to how this was happening, right? And where we were. I will say you're right. Before we get to this point, there's other really excellent things that happen. I really did love that introductory scene because it was so over the top and because it announced what kind of film it was, that we're not taking it totally seriously because the actors were not taking it totally seriously, right? Like just the register of it felt kind of campy. But that sort of gave me permission to sort of like loosen up and let's it's because this movie does straddle a lot of lines. You need a confident director and confident performers who are gonna blaze through that. And I think that I was in from the first scene. I will say another scene before we get into the point where the sort of plot starts moving along, humming along. We also get this wonderful scene where he is interviewing for a position, right? This happened before he started his killing spree, and just the worst possible interview, just the worst answers to questions, just that he's even given by a former employee of his now is in a position to where they're trying to like hire him, his former boss, this guy, and so he knows a question. The question was something about like, what's your weakness, right? And so he decides he's going to answer, and it's almost never a good idea, I think, in an interview to have a joke prepared. And so it doesn't land, and just everything about it is just like a disaster. And so the movie does a good job of like bringing him as low as he can go. To set us up for this. I mean, nothing can quite set you up for what lengths this man goes to. But there, there's a lot of interesting stuff that happens into it. And then we get just this, to me, like, I think that was my favorite actual moment in the movie was the first kill, because it was preceded by like the backstory of like this guy. There's a lot of backstory of it, right?
Yes.
It was a very involved, to the point where I was a little bit concerned when I realized that we were going to have multiple kills, and I was like, "Are we going to get this much backstory for like all of the things that are about to happen?" But it wasn't boring at all, right? But it's such a well orchestrated scene. We've all seen like fight scenes like this before, but I've never seen anything quite like this. And this one was the most sort of like messed up and funny. But so all right, so that's the context, and now let's go on. What did you?
Well, you're making me think about why we get so much backstory, especially for that first character. And I think, earlier I mentioned that part of the really distinctive camera work in this is a heavy use of reflection. So anytime someone looks into something that's reflective, you kind of see their face or someone else's face reflected in there in really cool ways. And I feel like part of the really powerful thing about slowly getting to know this other character who is going to be killed is that they are so much alike, that there really are mirror images of each other, both in their profile where they both got Pulp Man of the Year, and they were both kind of like really care so much about paper and and love their jobs and took great pride in being able to provide for their families, and that the loss, and they are also mirror images in the way that they've handled the loss of that job so poorly, right? And to the point where like he's holding him at gunpoint and yelling at him for things that he himself has done, right? He's like, your wife made all these sensible suggestions and you're just being a stubborn idiot and still trying to be a paper man. Why don't you go to that cafe? Her parents offered to open a cafe. And those are all things that he could just like flip back on himself, because he's similarly being stubborn about and the jealousy. We didn't mention in spoiler free mode, we probably should have, that there's also a pretty big chunk of this movie that's about marriage and sort of what financial does to marriage, right? And I feel like a lot of the jealousy, or the kind of like, once you have lost your power as the provider of your family in a patriarchal society, then you are romantically vulnerable. Like, your spouse is somehow not going to, either other people are going to prey upon her, or you're going to lose her, or whatever it is, right? So yeah, I feel like that was very purposeful, because I kept being like, especially those scenes where they're on the phone with each other. I'm like, you could just be friends. Like, right. What if you just talked about your problems and then solve them together? Like, right?
Yeah. Well, and so I think too, like Antonio's point with that, like, concern about like, are we going to have like a 25-minute background sequence for all of the people he put on the table? That seems like a lot. But this is my feeling of it as it was unfolding, was sort of like, oh, this is fun, that it's going to be, he's going to try to do this kill. And then at this point, like for this whole sequence, when it gets pretty slapsticky, and it has a lot of farce elements of like who's leaving a space, who's entering a space, who's around, who's not, people are tumbling and falling, and stuff's there's a snake bite that leads to some very good physical comedy.
So terrible.
And all of this stuff where when he's trying to do this is, part of it is like, to me felt like it was like, oh, well, he's not going to do it. Like, he has this plan, but like the whole thing is going to be like, and this is, I'm not like super actively thinking about it, but that kind of machine going in the back of my mind was like, oh, this movie's going to be about this guy who is trying to do this, it's all going to be like that first thing where he's thinking he's going to drop something on the head of a competitor, but then he can't bring himself to do it. And he can't figure out a way to, like, it's always going to be these things will unfold. And so this farce thing builds up and we learn more and more about this guy. So we learn to like him more, or at least care about him and his wife and their relationship, and feel for him, and in a way feel for her as well about what she's dealing with, until she's sleeping with some other guy. We're in spoiler mode, so I can say that. Then you're like, well, but also this guy's a loser now.
Did anyone think that guy sneaking out of the house the first time was their child?
Oh, no, I assumed
he was so young. Oh, okay. I'm just naive. I was like, it's like the son trying to sneak out of the house in the other house.
That's true. Anyway. No, but that's maybe I should have thought that. But I feel like all of this is sort of happening, and I think it is the peak of the pure comedy of the movie, right up until that guy dies, and he's not the one who kills him. His wife kills him, or the target's wife kills the target. And I apologize collectively for all of us that we cannot remember. I can't remember the character names, at least, of who was whom.
So I have the cast list open, but I think we're going to butcher these names pronunciation wise. But I remember the spelling in the subtitles of the movie being different. But the IMDb says Gu Biomo.
Okay, that sounds right.
But I feel like it's IMDb is spelling it. I probably don't need to say this, but IMDb, it's bothering me, so I'm going to. IMDb says GOO, but I feel like it was GU.
Yes.
In the movie.
Right, there was a GU and a go were the first two victims. Spoilers. More spoilers is more victims. But okay, this is Gu. Gu Byung-mo. And yeah, we like, it's sort of a surprise to our main hero that like this actually happens. And then, I would say part of what happens is like after that, it is a very, I'm realizing I'm just, this has a lot of Breaking Bad energy to it. It's a very Walter White thing of he gets better and better each time. And he's more planned out, and he has like, he leaves less evidence, or there's less chance that something could go wrong. And suddenly he gets better at killing everybody. But also between the first crime and just the general disappearance of people in this same small field and world, suddenly like police investigators start showing up and asking questions, but in the thing of like, hey, they're targeting people like you should be careful. And he's like, haha, okay.
Right. So it works in his favor that he is one of them.
Yeah. And then his wife starts to be like, what's going on? And he starts to be a little suspicious. And, you know, other members of his family potentially as well. So, yeah, I mean, yeah. And this is when it does feel like very Fargo to Antonio's point, where it is this kind of, it is sort of like Fargo, but with like, what if like William H. Macy suddenly like gets better at what he is doing and becomes more of a master criminal instead of just floundering and then flopping. Yeah, it's, yeah. So I think there is like, we get all this background because until he died, I did sort of think, oh, the whole point is going to be he can't do it. And then why doesn't he start a specialty paper company with all of the best competitors who know more than these other people? And it's going to be, you know, a little like where
It's
the
like
little
Ocean's
guys
11, but with paper. That's what I wanted.
Come in, or
That's what my heart wanted.
I don't know. I'm all in on the parallels to AMC shows. It's the season 3 finale of Mad Men where it's come in and take a seat. And then suddenly it is like with a very loud, after a lot of loud music and scrambling and yelling, it is a couple very loud gunshots and this guy's dead. And the movie kind of spins off in a whole new direction.
I wanted to ask a question before we leave the first kill. Why did you think because we mentioned that he got on the phone with him when he was about to go find his wife sleeping with the guy, because he knew that she was having an affair. And I mean, I know ultimately he wants to eliminate this guy, but I thought that this was an opportunity for it to just sort of like play out, right? Because like often when stuff like this happens, right? Fights happen, stuff happens, or at the very least, even if he doesn't die, he's broken, and maybe that would be enough. And I thought that that's how this part might end, and I was wrong. But is the reason that he calls him to delay him from like getting in the house? Also, the garage opens and like there's a lot of time. So I thought if this boy can scurry out once, he could. I thought that was plenty of time for him to scurry out again. But he didn't. So well, I don't know. Okay, well, maybe you're gonna. But why does he call him? Why does he stop him from going up? Is it that he doesn't want him to realize what's going on? What?
So first of all, I would say like he does say I feel like it's later. It's after that scene, or maybe it's like it was a throwaway during the scene. The guy says something about how, oh, I went out to do this thing that was going to take all afternoon, but then something went wrong, so I just came home. So I think that like even if he went to the garage, I think that they wouldn't have expected him there at all, so they wouldn't have heard, and so that's why they're still doing their thing up in the room. And I don't have the answer, but my take on it was like he's done all of this work to track the guy and this house and where like what his patterns are, and if he suddenly is like mad at his wife and either he moves out or she leaves, like that everything he's tracked is for nothing, and he has to start over again. So it was and also I do think he started to feel like sympathy for him and was like feeling the like, you know, despite him not like yelling about the like you needed to do blah 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 blah, like he's understanding that this is just a mirror version of himself, and at like a slightly lower or at least more openly dejected life, and just kind of, you know, just unshowered, unshaven scumminess of despair. So I think he felt like in that moment was just sort of like, I wouldn't want to know, so I don't want him to know, while also maybe strategically not wanting to like undermine everything he looked at. I don't know. Gio, what do you think, Jen?
Yeah, I was gonna say, because I have a beating heart, I just thought he felt bad for him, and I think the dynamic between these two characters is representative of like the tension of the whole movie, where it's like he both feels a kinship with this person, but because of the job market competition is so cutthroat that when you are a worker, your coworkers are your friends, but they're also your enemies because they're your competition. And I feel like that's kind of the dynamic that they have, is that he, like, you can imagine that if they both ended up working at the same paper company, they would be buddies. right? Because they're so similar and they love paper so much. And they have drinking problems, and they just, the list is very long of like things they have in common. And so I think in the moment he's trying to protect him. He's like, he feels bad for him. He's like, no, I don't want that to happen to you, because I wouldn't want that to happen to me. But then at the same time, that still doesn't negate the fact that he wants or perceives that he needs to kill this person too.
So now with the beating heart that you just mentioned, the beating heart, whatever he has of a beating heart, for me, goes away with the second kill, right? Because the second guy at the shoe store is just this incredibly sweet, decent father. I think he even meets the shoe person's like, or does he meet the daughter of the?
I think he sees her in like the reflection of the mirror, but he's in the store when the daughter comes in.
Okay, got it.
He knows there's a daughter, and they talk about their daughters.
Yes, so the fact that he carries on even after that, and even after the exchange, like this incredibly sad exchange in the shoe store that ends with like, please come back in an hour with your daughter, and I don't get the commission unless you whatever. The fact that he still sets the trap, and then and that part of the trap is dependent on him being decent and helping him with his car, and still
he knew he was a
carries
mechanic.
it out.
Right, he was a machinist, so he would be like, "I can help fix your car, your broken down car." Yeah, incredible. Yeah, it's this. Yeah. It's like that, like a little bit diabolical on the second one of the sort of like, oh, you really like thought through like how to do this.
Forgot about the shell casing though.
Yeah, that was very foolish.
He's no Dexter or whatever.
But then on the then in the third one, he really has that pretty clean. During the third kill, you could argue he didn't even need to kill that guy, because that guy was like, "You're awesome. I'm gonna see if I can get you a job." You know what I mean? Like in theory, he had a job, but that's the guy where he had gone to beg at the boss, and the guy had seen him.
Yeah, that's the first guy who he wants, out of rage, wants to drop the plant on.
Right.
From the rooftop, but then he doesn't.
But I don't think that guy had the power to actually create a new job. So that was my assumption.
But like, the conversation flows in a way that you're like, oh, like maybe he doesn't need to kill this guy but the specific thing he says is, I kind of don't want to kill you, but not killing you would make the other two deaths meaningless. So there's this like concept of like, he's too deep, like he's too far in now, he can't go back even if he wants to. So I don't know.
Would you say he had another choice, Jen?
Yeah, but he felt like he had no choice. Yeah. It works every time.
For the logistics of kill number 3, did you all assume, as I did, that he was poisoning him, and that was the method of death, was just going to be he was just going to poison this guy? Because
specifically alcohol poisoning, isn't it?
Well, I mean,
sort of.
That's one way to go. Like. I thought he could have eventually put something stronger, especially when he was throwing out his own drink, that he was putting something in there and then that would be how the death would go. So obviously it gets worse. Like it gets worse, and we do get that. Like he's literally like buried. Then he puts the funnel in his mouth, and then does he put meat in there?
It's raw meat and alcohol, so he chokes on it like he vomited up his food and died while...
Right, yeah, my interpretation, he was trying to stage like an alcohol overdose kind of situation.
Right. Okay, so the poison would have been more of a red flag than just that. Okay. Fine. It does seem like the crime scene is. I don't know the state of South Korean police. And their forensics. But yes, it's a comedy. Whatever. We just whatever. But it does lead. It does lead to that image of the Saran wrap around the face too. So many visuals here that will just stay with me, but are also funny. They're also incredibly funny and just wrong. But in the best possible way.
And then, I mean, this is not like a fancy visual, like all the reflections and the dissolves and the transitions, but just the moment once we've built up to, while this is unfolding, our main character's wife is trying, leading her life, doing her own thing, and it's starting to get suspicious about stuff. And their son is arrested, or I guess is brought in for a break-in he did with his still employed his friend who still has an employed dad who might buy their house, who's like a jerk about everything, and he stole a bunch of phones, and they're like, no one, there's no guarantee anyone knows where the phones are. So the husband and wife just bury the phones in the backyard while the son is at the police station. And then the son wakes up long enough to see the father, like, try to figure out what to do with the body of the second victim. And he doesn't necessarily see it, but he hears a chainsaw and he's just like, I don't know what's happening. And so the wife is like, realizing that there was a new plant put in over the phones, that there's a second new plant that was put into the yard, and she's like, all right. So she takes the plant out. So she's digging up what she does not know, but we know is the second body, while it's cutting back and forth to the hero digging the hole for the third victim, who, like, at the time I was like, oh, this is going to be his grave, but instead is this buried up to his head in dirt so he can be choked out via saran wrap and funnel, which is insane, but amazing. Really, really well done. And just incredibly dastardly from a guy who couldn't pull a trigger, like what seems to be merely like days ago. It's not 100% clear. Like, I think a year goes by, a year plus goes by over the course of the movie, but, I'm not quite sure how far in between each kill it's supposed to be. So, but yeah, it's just that parallel of like one person digging to hide and one person digging to uncover, and cutting back and forth, and then finally a FaceTime call between the two of them while the one guy is like muttering against this suffocating saran wrap around his face, and the wife basically being like, all right, I guess I'm in. Like, you got to do what you got to do. Like, again, if there were other options, I don't know what they are. So perhaps there are no other options. I don't know, like, exactly how she might have phrased that, but yeah. So great. What a great movie.
This is sort of a leading question, sorry, but what do you think each of the kills represents a distinct thing? Or, like, is there something you know what I mean? Like, we've established that he's getting better at murdering each time, but is there something sort of thematic or from a character perspective that we gain uniquely from each murder?
I mean, I'm not certain in terms of, I think there may be, but I don't immediately have an answer about like the general themes of the movie per se. But I think that his evolution or de-evolution, if you would prefer, of how he is doing this is just showing the kind of like how much this feeling of being trapped in a system and being like, once you're like, oh, I guess, like, if I say, it's every man for himself, and if I say I have to do whatever it takes to provide for my family and to get back into this game, and the conclusion that I draw from that is there's no sort of moral line that I can't, that would stop me from achieving those goals is the primary objective, and no morality should get into the way, then, it's sort of going from him trying, fumbling, failing to just like attack someone and wipe them out, to, and then like having basically fate, happenstance, someone else involved in the sequence step in and make the choice to finish the job. So that's, from that, the next step is setting a trap, not like surprising someone, but luring someone in, and then shooting them and killing them that way. And then going to, what is their weakness and what is their flaw and what can I do to exploit who they are and the problems that they have. So not only will they die, but it will look like they did it to themselves. And so they're not just disappearing, but they are they like to the outside world will not be the victim, but the perpetrator of their own downfall. And so, that just feels like, just the shedding of morality each step of the way, of just being like, once you're like, well, I guess I can do this, then it's, I guess I can trap a person to doing it. And then it's, I can like almost like hurt the person beyond killing them by like ruining the memory of who they were, by making it seem like they did something to themselves instead of they were a victim.
Right. And in their own home.
Right. In their own home doing the thing. And like, with a wife who, they're separated, or I forget if they were divorced or just separated, but like with people who know that he's probably going through a bad time. The third victim, I mean. So yeah, it just was like, just sinking deeper and deeper into like an amoral approach to how to do things. And I don't know if there's like, I guess all of that is thematic in addition, based around this idea of like, if this is our reality, then what? Like, it's sort of like, now what does that mean? What does that entail? But I think that, just for that character, it is sort of how he is, going down, which is kind of great how that it ends with him finally getting his job back, working without any other humans and working around managing all of the things that will clearly eventually replace him. But he's alone and he is one, but he is just completely isolated by himself in like this thing that's not at all the thing that he loved, but he's just happy to have, he's happy to have won this game that sucked and was awful and made him terrible and made his life terrible and made everything around him way worse. But he won. So I guess good for you.
He also, the other part, I mean, we've alluded to the parallel love story, right? Like he preserved his family. The family backstory is more complicated than a normal backstory here, right? It's that he married someone who was married before, and so the first child is not biologically his child, but he's been his father since he was, I think, 2. I think is right, and then the daughter is biologically his, but basically barely speaks and doesn't play, is a cellist,
a cello prodigy.
And cello prodigy. And contrasting to Parasite, where like there were like these very dire straits, was about like sort of like just survival. This is like she needs a fancy professor to help
Right.
her to reach her potential and be independently whatever, right? Independently wealthy, or be able to take care of herself, because and they keep and the house that they're in is a nice house, right? And it's a house that he grew up in, but then he did all of the renovations to make it like super nice. And so there's a threshold of like of life that he's just not willing to cede, which is different, right? Than in Parasite. But anyway, I also do not want to spend a lot of time like comparing them, but I do think that's an interesting. It also just feeds into this. Let's talk about the love story, and the wife, and like there's the crazy dance sequence, which is also a lot of fun, and interesting, and all these jealousies with the dentist. Yeah, the costume.
The costumes are so perfect.
Yeah. So yeah. What did you think about that element of the film, and how their love, ultimately endures through all of these awful things?
Well, so that was going to be my answer to my own question earlier, is that each murder is an aspect of his family life that he doesn't want to give up. So the first kill is there's a marital problem, right? So he sees his own marital problems in that other relationship. The second one is the guy is really trying to provide for his daughter, right? And wants and is like, fighting just to get a commission on shoes, even though he clearly looks miserable, so his daughter can go hang out with her friends and have a good life and whatever. And they sort of bond over their that they both have daughters, and the shoe, and he really opens up. Is it Mansu is the main character's name? We haven't actually said
yes,
it.
Mansu.
Crazy. Mansu really opens up to him to sort of say, like, that's where we learn all the stuff that we just said about the daughter, right? And how I can't buy her $50,000 cello, but I can buy her shoes, right? And then the third one, I have a little harder time kind of fitting into this framework, but I feel like it's the house, because that guy spends so much time talking about, I really thought I was going to have the perfect life if I just had this house in the woods, and I really thought we were going to have barbecues every weekend, and like, you know what I mean? Like, and so I think that's what he kind of represents. The like home life, or like the material goods of his family life. But I feel like the love story is so powerful because it's like he can see it slipping through his fingers the longer he doesn't have a job. And so to him, it's very simple, where it's like, if you want to keep your family, if you want to keep your house, you have to kill these 3 people so that you can have a crappy job again. Like, so yeah, I don't know. But I feel like the backstory of how they were young and in love also is kind of echoed between the two couples, and the idea that like, oh, you know, we were so good together, everything was magical, and then like the reality of having to financially adult sets in, and that kind of like tarnishes everything.
Yes, although it's also like that even when they were young, like she says something like, but you were not around because you were going to night school to get your degree. You couldn't have fun with
me. Yeah.
And so we didn't have all the fun that we should have had in the beginning. And later he was just like, you're right. Like I should have spent more time with you having more fun. And then
it's very Ebenezer Scrooge.
Yes.
Code.
And then at the end of the whole movie, like she's like, again, like agreed to like go along with this. She's happy to sort of, not say anything. She's fully aware that he's been making these choices at a part of it, and he has saved the family, and they do not look particularly happy or sweet in the way that, like, obviously, again, there is that opening that's very like almost camp and blown out and everything. But even when like they're just practicing the dance in the bedroom at one point, which is when she first is like, we never did this stuff when we were young, that they just like, they just really enjoyed being around each other. There is a coldness and a distance, and not to be like, oh, and we saw the director and the director said that, but the director said that. The director was like, note that the family doesn't look very happy. Like they've gotten everything they want back. And they, like they're happy to have their dogs, and they seem happy living in their house. And the son is still friends with that kid, and they hang out. And the wife says goodbye to the husband as he goes off to work, but it's not like, okay, goodbye, I love you. It's more like, all right, well, goodbye, good luck out there. And there's not that same level of warmth, because there is this truth between them about what's happened and what's been done, and maybe the level of depravity that happened. So yeah, in doing all of this to save the thing he wanted to save, it also potentially has just ruined it, or at least spoiled it, because like he's held on to it. It hasn't slipped through his fingers, but it's not what it was. And it's this new thing, and that thing is corrupted because it's maybe everything is corrupted.
Right. The apple tree will grow and it'll look nice, but at the roots is it like a dead body?
Yes.
Right. And like the stolen phones and whatever. Right. So yeah.
And they established that it's generational too, because earlier you mentioned that this was the house he grew up in, but I think they make a point to say that he had to move around a lot. And then we later learn about like the 20,000 pigs that got diseased. And then the grandfather
killed himself,
had to kill all of them. And the second murder victim gets kind of, I don't remember what the proper culinary term is, but like gets
cubed.
Trust.
Oh, thank
trust,
you.
Right?
Of course you would know that. Why didn't I think of that?
I prefer cubed, but that's okay.
Sure. But it uses the sort of chicken wire or whatever to bind him as if he's a piece of meat. And they pretend the lie they tell kind of themselves and the son is that it's he just buried a pig for fertilizer. And there's a story of the history of this house as being a pig farm where there was like porcinide, right? Or whatever. I don't know what the right word is, but like like
pig slaughter,
all this death and destruction, right? But and so, and they make some comment where he's like, yeah, my father was never really stable. And so you get the sense that the same thing happened to him, right? His farm went south. He had to kill all these pigs. they probably had to move right after that because they couldn't pay for the house, and that the son, the main character of the movie, spends his whole life trying to buy that house back and regain the life that his family lost the first time around. So sad. It's like very depressing.
Well, and also, I mean, because the barn is where after he kills the pigs, the grandfather kills himself in the barn.
Oh, that's right.
When they buy the house, he tears down the barn to build this greenhouse where he spends his free time like making plants or grooming these plants, and then later trussing a body after revving a chainsaw enough to scare his son. Who's aware, who sees it without the dad knowing. So yeah, it is something interesting about like, I think you're right. The pigs are an important symbol of like, it's death, but it's also a disease that it leads to the death. And the disease is this sort of need,
but then
to maintain things in society
that births new life, which then makes the process start all over again.
Yeah,
kind of right. So I want to pivot this to like a spin-off question, because during the Q&A, one of the questions was like, how do you interpret the ending, basically? And Park Chan-wook gave us two possible interpretations, right? He sort of says like, well, and we just described one where it's like, everything looks fine, but that there's this like dark secret that's now haunting all of them and kind of undermining the happiness that they might have at the end of the movie. Or it could be really hopeful, whereas like they do explain from stinking rotten things, or I don't remember what the actual quote is like, but from that something beautiful and wonderful can grow, right? And so that there's an optimistic interpretation at the end of the movie. Like where did you land in terms of like what is in this family's future?
I took the former.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just the mood of the film, and while it's true that the wife ultimately like decides like, we're in this, I'm gonna stay with you. Um, I don't, it's just it also felt like she didn't have many choices either, really, right? Like she needed to protect her family. To her credit, she was willing to like go work at the dentist office and go like do these things. Um, but yeah, go ahead. What were you gonna say, PT?
I was gonna say she was ready to move into an apartment. She had the plan similar to the other guy's wife. She had a plan for like, we can manage this with less money coming in until you figure this out. But the guy didn't want to sell the house. I did lean generally like Antonio towards the like, I mean, this is dark. They think things are dire for everybody. But I did think what director Park said about it can grow, something can grow out of it. That to me, that was about the daughter who, like finally is willing, not necessarily because of the family, the parents, but because the dogs are back and the dogs can return. She plays this cello piece that she has been like, you were not aware that when she was sort of doing these dot drawings throughout the whole, I wasn't aware of this. Maybe other people were, that when she was doing these dot drawings, she was in her own way sketching out music for her cello. And then once the dogs are back and everything is as it should be, she's been the one most lamenting the loss of the dogs. She's ready to play this piece. And this is beautiful music that she is willing to make. And she is the next generation. And she has had this world protected around her. So maybe she'll be the one to break the trend. But I don't think the parents will ever really be happy. I don't think the son is still with that kind of like degenerate kid with like the crappy dad. They're still buddies. We never see it, but there is this sort of, hanging like axe of an issue of like, at some point we need to tell him that like, I'm not his real dad. Or it's actually the mom saying, you promised we would tell him. And the dad is like, but he is my son and I am his dad. But like, this kid is definitely old enough where whenever that information comes out, it's going to go poorly. Like it's, right. He's not going to be particularly happy. And also he has this like little, like the tendrils of a shady life that maybe seem to be in line with, I mean, I don't know if being unstable or moving around a lot is shady necessarily, but it doesn't seem like things are going to go great for the three of them, but for the daughter, maybe there is something
I like
there,
that.
and there is some promise.
Yeah.
But she also, they make a point to say that her main verbalizations are mimicking what other people around her say, and to me
Yes.
that's again, it's like the mirroring thing where that's what, like, she might absorb some of their toxicity. Right?
Didn't she say
And
something towards the end that was a new thing? It, like, she repeats from the very earlier, it's like the bugs are eating the plants or something like that,
right.
or the bugs are eating the tree, which is something that someone else said. But before that, and now I cannot remember what it was, like she's running from like the back of the yard kind of forward right before she says that. And I thought she said something that I had not heard, but maybe it was like a throwaway line that she had picked up.
I guess I was just so worried that she was going to repeat something he said that would incriminate him. And that's how he was going to get caught. That's where I thought it was going. Because I'm like, they've mentioned that they've shown that she just like out of context repeats things that she's heard.
Right.
And I'm like, this has to go wrong somehow.
Right.
But it ultimately doesn't, which I guess is good.
It does have, to go back an hour and 20 minutes in and 40 minutes into spoiler mode, to go back to the like pre-spoiler mode stuff where we were like, what are they doing? There is something about like there is something very noir about all this with the like, here's like a false lead, or here's something we're putting out there that is interesting in character building, but we're not going to resolve it, or it sets you up to think like, the criminal activity of the son is going to somehow lead to, the downfall of the parents. But like it does, it creates some problems and there's some good scenes around it, but it doesn't lead to a downfall. The daughter's repetition doesn't do anything there. The stuff about like, are we going to say that there's a real dad out there, a biological dad that's not our guy? No, we don't see that. So I think that's interesting. I think that works. And I think that also fits into this like messiness of life in general, and also life in the structures of modern society where he's, put into this position where, again, he feels there's no viable alternatives outside of the choice he makes.
I did want to ask about the sort of nature versus technology thread running through this, because we have the two trees, right? One underneath one is a bunch of phones that's not going to nourish the tree at all, and under the other one is a dead body, which is bad, right? But is at least going to fertilize the tree. And then with the ending where he's the cheese stands alone with a bunch of robots, and he's made it all the way to the end, but he's alone, right? As PT was talking about earlier. But it's specifically like the new competition is not going to be with fellow humans, but it's or it is, but then the added layers, we're also going to be competing against AI. And so I thought that was very topical, but I think the fact that it's the industry that he works in is paper, and they talk a lot about growing the trees specifically to make paper, and how that is like a self-sustainable like ecosystem or practice or something like that. And so we see a lot of that, and there's just a lot of imagery of trees being savagely cut. So like how does that fit in? Like, is that a metaphor for something? Is like, why paper, why trees? Because then we also have his greenhouse, when there's that scene where he like tries to mold the tree branch with the wire, and then it cracks and breaks, right? So it's like there's something happening with trees and nature and paper, and how we we take something from nature and like process it. Like, but I don't know. I can't quite put my finger on what the meaning behind it is.
I mean, I hadn't. That's all great, because I hadn't thought about that necessarily, and it is reminding me that the beginning of the credits, after we sort of go from the factory he's in, but the sort of cut between the director and then the stars and the producer in the credits are robots, automated machines doing this work that we had seen earlier in the movie, were done by people cutting down trees and then stripping them and piling them up for going off to the paper mill. Is that still a sustainable practice if it's done by these machines? I don't know, but maybe not. Probably not. I wonder if this is, I'm not thinking necessarily based on the movie, but based on what you just said, Jen, that maybe it is something about what are the things that we ascribe to being natural versus the thing that are actually just man-made and by extension choices of people. And so it's just kind of like, oh, well, like the natural order of things is like we all have to compete for only a few jobs, or we all have to we have to provide for ourselves, or we have to prioritize our family over other people, even if we take it to this extreme of like actively hurting others. That's the way of the world. That's the natural order of things. But like when the person who's doing that is trying to actively bend, show that like nature goes in that direction, it breaks because it doesn't do that. And this sort of some of these artificial structures that we have in society, the companies, the mergers, the buyouts, you could say even the like construction of paper, which is just old technology, versus the phones and the texts and the emails, which are the new technology, that none of that is going to nourish life in the way that actual just like maintaining a social connection and a human order, a social order and a human connections that allow people to actually like grow and flourish instead of just constantly fighting each other.
I like that.
Okay, good.
Like that.
Print it on paper.
Oh, but it's also kind of like anything and anyone can be a commodity. Mm-hmm. I feel like, since this movie's so clearly coming after capitalism and labor and systems of labor, like I think in my Letterboxd review I wrote, and I still don't really know if this makes any sense, but this is just what this movie made me think of. The relations of production were the means of production all along. And to me, why are you laughing?
It was great. No, because it was really good.
And by that, I think I meant that there's a clear parallel between the relationships between all these people, all these characters, and the way that they compete and fight against each other, but then also the way that families try to sort of like stick together, right? Like this one does at the end. That very social system is what keeps the machines humming. Like what keeps production going and
Mm-hmm.
manufacturing
Mm-hmm.
and processes and capitalism and all that sort of stuff. So I feel like the tree thing is like, I think it's a very deliberate choice not to use the word. I feel like using the word choice is now loaded whenever we talk about this movie.
I have listened to multiple podcasts over the course of my podcast listening around the John Carpenter movie, The Thing, and those discussions for the people on those episodes ruin the word thing, because then they're just like, well, the thing is, and they're like, oh God. And that like just happens. That's inevitable. So yeah, but I mean, the movie is about choice, and it is about what people are doing, and like how, again, this is not the way it has to be. It does not have to be set up this way. We have all, we don't all have like the individual. No one has the individual power to just like change it all right away. But like together, everyone could. But enough people benefit from it, and enough people get like enough benefits above what like they fear they might get if they let go of it, that it's still going to persist and not be let go. So I think all that is right. I was chuckling in appreciation for what you were saying. I was not laughing at what you were saying.
Well, to me, part of the why the dark comedy in this is so dark is because every time someone says, I have no other choice, the context in which they say that is so absurd.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that it's like, but you do. Like it's clear you don't really you have no other choice but to murder these three people in this like terrible fashion. That can't possibly be true, right? And I feel like every time a character says no, I have no other choice, from the American businessmen like firing and restructuring the company to all the way down to like probably the son at some point. I don't remember if he actually says I had no other choice, but like he probably felt like he had to steal those phones because like he was like, my family needs my help, right? You know what I mean? Like that, at no point is it like, oh yeah, we agree, you had no other choice, you're good. Like
good point. Yeah, it's true. And to your point about the importance of the trees, I believe the 3 or 4 different like official posters that exist for the movie that are on Letterboxd and are on Rotten Tomatoes, all those places are centered on a tree, and the tree is at the middle of it. So I do think, I mean, maybe that's just the marketing department, but at least the marketing department had no other choice but to put the tree on because they thought it was important.
Should we do an Oscars watch for real?
I think
we sort of like pre-gamed an Oscars watch, but I think we could do one in earnest now that we can talk spoilers. So I believe, as we said earlier, Park Chan-wook has never actually been nominated for any Oscars. Is that correct?
I believe that is right.
Because like the only other one I can think of which could possibly have been would have been for Oldboy, but I feel like that movie is too actiony.
That was not. I don't think that was like that was not a welcomed movie. I don't think for the Academy. It won Best British Independent Film Awards for Best Foreign Independent Film. It won some European things. Grand Prix at Cannes, but the Oscars were not paying attention to that at the time. I believe both The Handmaiden and Decision to Leave, which are his last 2. Yes, those were his last 2 written and directed, or at least co-written and directed feature films. There was expectations that both of those were going to get at least international feature nomination, and then it didn't happen. And I think both. I mean, if you listen to the long take reviews, Oscar Ferry Flashback, Park Chan-wook was nominated for Best Director for The Handmaiden because that change was made, but in reality,
I forgot we did that.
It didn't happen.
Good for us.
Yeah, it was a great choice.
It was. What do we think this one? Is there something about this one that's going to push it through to international feature?
I'm a little bit worried about it because even though the critical reception is pretty rapturous, the critical reception for his other films and Decision to Leave, I remember being pretty rapturous too. And I think because it's a comedy and a very dark comedy, that doesn't hit the sweet spot for the Academy, right? Like that's often a little bit too edgy, especially when you have something. I mean, my hope is that it at least gets nominated, but sentimental value feels like exactly like from the title, even right? Like is like exactly what the Academy will gravitate toward, and so so I don't think it's in line for a win. I hope it's in line for a nomination, but I wouldn't be shocked if it didn't. If he didn't have to make the trip to LA.
Jen, what is the Katie Rich website? I'm sorry if you have to cut this out.
I just pulled that up. Funny you should ask.
What is it called?
It's called anklerpundits.com.
Ankler Pundits.
When you click on it, it says Prestige Junkie Pundits, but the URL is Ankler Pundits.
Well, that's really
no free ads, but I do like them a lot. So
no, it's
they get free.
It's fair. I was curious what the
for international feature.
No, I want to look up adapted screenplay.
Ooh,
which people do have this on here in the mix. Not everyone does.
That would be fun.
To me, I feel like that could, Train Dreams. We have some obviously One Battle After Another and Hamnet as kind of the 1 and 2. Train Dreams, Wake Up Dead Man, Begonia, and No Other Choice are kind of sprinkled in a lot of these lists. Someone has highest to lowest at number 1, and that's ambitious. Anyway, that's what I'm thinking. Where something could happen, not most likely to happen, but where something could happen outside of international feature. I mean, this is in some ways feels like it could be the year of the he's due. Like it's time. Like we got to do it, and that that could be. Paul Thomas
Anderson.
Sort of,
if not now, when kind of thinking.
Maybe. But I wonder if the sort of accumulation of, there's the Vengeance trilogy with Old Boy at the centerpiece, and people are just like, oh yeah, like that was really great, and especially it does feel problematic to continually be like, and Korean movies because of Bong Joon-ho and Parasite, but because of Bong Joon-ho and Parasite, people started to be like, I think more people, especially in the Academy, might have been like, oh, what's happening over there? And Park Chan-wook always has felt like he's the next guy. He's the guy with director Bong, who's there, like having all these great lists of movies. And I will admit to not having seen anything outside of the sort of majors that seem to be there, which Vengeance trilogy, and then The Handmaiden and Decision to Leave. And I have not seen all of those either. And now into No Other Choice, but like Handmaiden, nothing happened. Decision to Leave, nothing happened. Is there a momentum thing? And now he's with Neon. Neon's been very successful at getting nominations. Like, could there just be a sort of just like, oh yeah, like even with everything Antonio's saying is right, that like this is kind of a weird vibe, and I've heard people say that where it's just like, oh, I don't know, with this tone and like what it's saying here, like, it doesn't have, maybe it's too leaning into comedy, it's too much of a farce, and the darkness, like mixing with that, like may not be something that can relate. But maybe there is going to be a degree of like, if it comes down to, this movie versus, like Secret Agent, where it's like, well, Brazil won recently and I did have fun with this movie. And it's, I've heard this guy before, Park Chan-wook, like we should nominate him. Like, could that be enough to get votes? Plus, he gave a very good little, even though he was like, I would like to be back in Korea. He didn't directly say that, but he said the traveling back and forth seemed like it could be very stressful.
And before he said that, he said many smart and insightful things that would arguably make him a strong campaigner.
Yes.
If they got him out there. So yeah, I would agree with Antonio that I think the biggest thing working against this is the comedy and the tone, like the genre, like it's the genre factor. Because if you kind of, again, I hate that. No, I'm not going to compare it to Parasite. But it is our only other.
It's tough.
Best Picture winner that like it's the easiest thing to compare it to. But it seems like even if, okay, let me broaden it out to more international features then. Like, so if you think about other international features that have broken, not only been nominated in international feature, but broken past it, there's usually some kind of like added, like if it is a genre movie, it's a very, very elevated genre movie. So I'm thinking of like Anatomy of a Fall.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that would be my closest comp in terms of like that movie is like very dark in the end. And but still thrilling, and it has the thriller factor to it. So like that's why I was reaching for Parasite again, because Parasite I think had the thriller element that even if you weren't as appreciative of the social commentary that it was creating, you were like, wow, there were so many twists and turns in that movie. I was not expecting where that went, right? And the same thing with Anatomy of a Fall, where it's like, it's at its core, they marketed that movie as a murder mystery and a trial movie, right? Even though it's so much more than that. And I feel like that sell is harder for No Other Choice, because it's like, watch 3 people be brutally murdered, but also laugh at it. Like that seems like a harder ask for most of the Academy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, our heroes are not very heroic, and they also, beyond the potential for long-term rot in their lives, are not really punished for what they've done, if there's any like need for retribution. I mean, just looking. We didn't
even talk about that. Like, not to backtrack, but like, why did they get away with it? Why is that important for the story? But anyway, go ahead.
Well, because maybe this, they're not wrong. I guess like you got to do what you got to do. What other option was there?
PT comes out as pro murder. Everybody.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, do I, or does the movie? I don't know. But look, I mean, there is, and again, I'm hastily rifling through, what's now Prestige Junkie pundits / Ankler pundits, as well as Gold Derby.
Yeah.
And I mean, Gold Derby, I'm looking at, I should be looking at experts. I'm looking at combined. but like there's like it's kind of lingering outside, but you know, on the outside looking in, but on the outside looking in at Best Picture, at even Best Director, like, you know, not there, but like, could this be something that people respond to and it has some positivity? I don't know. I don't think it's likely. I think adapted screenplay would probably be the other place where it could show up.
I feel like
unless there's some real like kind of crash outs on what people are now thinking of, like, you know, 6 to 10 in Best Picture. Like, could this be like a Nickel Boys that gets a screenplay and gets into like the 10th spot of Best Picture?
Right. Yeah, I'd say at best it's on the bubble. And I think because the field is already so crowded in a lot of ways, like especially in a lot of categories, that it is just on the outside looking in, probably, if we're being realistic. That doesn't mean it's not deserving, but I think that's what we're looking at right now. I think it's like it's probably gonna get into international feature, but even that is not a sure thing. And that's probably where it ends. I would think it would be really great to throw in an adapted screenplay. I think it would definitely deserve it. Maybe we have to do a book club episode with Greg and we all read the book. Because that was the thing I kept thinking about. I'm like, this is from a novel? Like, what is the novel like?
This is from an American novel.
Right. Like, so I'd be really interested to see what's directly pulled from the novel versus like what's been changed.
And I mean, this is somewhat defeating the idea of calling it book club. There is also a Greek-French filmmaker who made a version of this movie in 2005, which was the person, Costa Gavras, who got the like thank you to that, because I guess Park Chan-wook has been talking about wanting to adapt this novel for a long time, and then this other person made it, and then they've been talking since about like, here's what I would do, and building it up for the last 20 years to figure it out, because that was a 2005 movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would say, like, looking at most people's director position predictions, it does seem like the international spots would either go to Joachim Trier, or, which I've been saying wrong this whole time. It's not it's Joachim. It's a Y sound, not an H sound. Joachim. It would either be Joachim Trier or Jafar Panahi. That's what it looks like. If people, so I feel like if we're thinking about the Best Picture lineup, if we're having one but up to 2 spots like we did last year for international features overlapping with Best Picture, right now it's looking like those would be the 2 and therefore not leaving any room for no other choice. But that could change. You never know.
It's true.
It's still early.
They do have other choices.
They do. The Academy always has other choices, but so often votes as if they have no other choice.
Yes.
That's what I would say. All right. I think we've done it. Let's bury this. Antonio, I'm really glad we got to go see this movie together, because that's a pretty rare thing. And I'm really glad that we could talk about it so soon. Where can folks find you? And I know there's only one place.
Find me on Letterboxd at Aelefano, AELEFANO, PT. Where can they find you?
They can also find me on Letterboxd at PT McNiff, PTMCNIFF. You can also find the show there at LTR Pod. You can look for the show on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at The Long Take Review. You can send us an email, thelongtakereview@gmail.com, or you can subscribe, follow, add, whatever the mechanism is, wherever you get your podcast, wherever you're listening right now. Just subscribe, follow along, and we'll give you some more episodes as we get further into the award season. Jen, where can folks find you?
You can find me on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at Sopchockchai, SOPCHOCKCHAI, and on Letterboxd at Qui-Gon Jen. Ending this podcast was not my choice. Pap's forehead.
Oh, yeah. That was great.
We didn't even talk about that. There's so much we still didn't talk about.
There's so much little stuff.